Okay, so good morning. Continuing with looking at the 37 practices of bodhisattvas. So the next three verses that we'll be covering this week seem to be related to the topic of emptiness, which is a huge topic. So we don't have a whole lot of time, so I'll have to make it short. So we're up to verse 22. It says, whatever appears is your own mind. Your mind from the start was free from fabricated extremes. Understanding this, do not take to mind inherent signs of subject and object. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. So when I first looked at this verse and started thinking about it, I wondered which tenet system Tokme Zangpo follows. Because this first line says, whatever appears is your own mind. And this is a tenet of the Chittamatra, or mind-only school. But the Buddha himself said things like this. For example, in one sutra called the Sutra of the 10 Grounds, he made statements like that. And it can be interpreted in different ways by the different tenet systems, which, again, we don't have time to go into all that. But since most Tibetan lamas, especially in the Gelug tradition, regard the Madhyamika Prasangika tenet system as the most accurate one, and also the one that we really have to understand if we want to totally eradicate all our suffering and the causes of suffering. So it's best from that point of view to look at how they would interpret this line. So we have to be careful. It doesn't mean literally that whatever appears, whatever we see, whatever we experience is just our own mind. For example, Venerable Jampa is sitting there in front of me. So to think she's just my mind, she's not really there. It's just my mind imagining her, or any person or object. Even the Chittamatrans wouldn't agree with that. That's not the meaning. So we have to understand what it means. And so according to the Madhyamika Prasangika, what this means is that everything we perceive and experience is dependent on our mind. It's not totally independent, unrelated, unconnected to our mind, but it's related to our mind. And it's not easy to understand what that really means. But I always like to talk about things in a practical way, how we can use them in our life. So there is a way we can use this idea in our ordinary life, especially when it comes to disturbing emotions. Like the last two verses we looked at were related to anger and attachment. So these are two of the biggest disturbing emotions that come up in our mind, and they probably come up on a daily basis. And there are lots of different antidotes for working on these, such as practicing patience, love, and compassion versus anger, and remembering impermanence versus attachment. But the other antidotes, other than thinking about emptiness, those other antidotes just help us to manage these emotions and subdue them, calm them down, but they don't completely eradicate them. So they're still there in seed form and can rise up and make a mess of things and create suffering. So it said that only emptiness, or rather the wisdom understanding emptiness, is the antidote that will completely eradicate, completely eliminate these disturbing emotions in our minds such that they're gone totally forever and they'll never come back. So that's why it's emphasized so much that we do try to understand emptiness. And we, even with a little bit of understanding of emptiness, we can start using that in our daily life when we face disturbing emotions. So let's say you're angry at somebody. There's some person that you're feeling angry, annoyed, irritated, is driving you crazy. As soon as that person walks in the room, you just feel, and you want to run away. So this kind of thing happens. And we can use other antidotes, but using emptiness in this situation, what we could do is not at the moment, maybe on the spot, it's hard to do this, but at another time when we're sitting quietly in our room or in the meditation hall, we could just look for the sense of I that is over here and lying behind our emotions, these disturbing thoughts and emotions that are churning around in our mind. So we have a sense that there is a real I, a real me, somewhere inside of us, and lies behind these emotions is what feels the anger, the annoyance, the irritation, and has all these thoughts, disturbing thoughts about the other person. So everybody feels this. We all have this feeling that there's a real I somewhere inside, but probably most people never question it. They just go along with it. And, like a slave, whatever this I tells me to do, I just do it. And never think, well, what is this I anyway? Is it really there? So this is what we're advised to do in the the whole topic of emptiness. We're advised to look for that I, not just assume that it's there because it feels like it's there. It feels like it's really there. But ask ourselves, is that true? Because if it was true, we should be able to find it. If the I did exist the way it appears as a real thing, a findable thing, we should be able to find it. So we can spend some time just thinking about our body and mind. This is what is here. We do have a body and a mind, but each of those is made up of many parts. And we can just go through the parts. I often feel the sense of I here, which is probably where a lot of people feel as well, kind of here in the chest. So you just think about what's actually there. We can't see it visibly with our eyes, but we know, there's skin and flesh and bone and, the esophagus going down and the spine and the back. So just think about what's actually there and ask yourself, are any of those things I? Are any of those things me? Can I point to any of those things and say, that's me right there? Or imagine if you were going into an operating room and the surgeon is opening you up and, kind of pulling things apart. Would they find something in there, like a little person, a little boss, a little CEO? That's how it feels. It feels like there's a boss, a CEO in there who's making all the decisions and telling me what to do and running my life. So, it sounds funny, but it is funny, actually, when we think about it. So it's good to look for that. And then we can also look through the mind, because the mind is also just something made up of many, 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 many parts, changing all the time. Each moment, different thoughts, emotions, perceptions arising and passing, arising, like bubbles, It appears and then it's gone. Next one appears and it's gone. So look among the parts of the mind and see, are any of those the I? So this is something we can do. And even if we don't come to a conclusion, like we find something or we don't find something and we realize emptiness, but even just doing that, even that process, even that attempt, that investigation, that questioning, kind of pulls the rug out from under the anger, Have you ever had that experience? It's like, well, wait a minute, who is this I that's angry? So it helps to cool down the anger and calm down the anger. And another thing we can do is to do the same kind of process with this person that we find so annoying and irritating and driving us crazy. So also look for that person. Because again, it seems like there's a real person over there who's just, causing me to have all these disturbing thoughts and feelings. So if there really is such a person as they appear, we should be able to find them. So we can apply the same analysis to them as well. So this is just one thing we can do. There are other things we can do as well. But the point here is that whatever we see, whatever appears to us, whether it's appearing directly to our five senses or internally to our mental consciousness, whatever is appearing to us doesn't exist the way it appears. It appears as if it's really there, out there, over there, objectively, totally autonomous, totally independent of our mind, totally cut off from me and my mind. That's how it appears. And what the Buddha said, and the Buddhist philosophers say, it's not like that. Things don't exist that way. Things are dependent on our mind. They're labeled by, according to Madhyamika Prasanga, they're just labeled by the mind. They're just imputed by the mind. It's not easy to really understand what that means, but even to start looking into that, making an investigation, really helps to soften things. Lama Yeshe used to use the expression concrete view, that the way things normally appear to us as if they are concrete, very hard, very solid, very real, just like that. And just making a little bit of an investigation into this kind of thing, questioning how things appear, even if it doesn't lead to a full-on understanding of emptiness, but it helps to soften the concrete view. Things don't appear so solid and concrete. They appear more sort of transparent and soft, and that has a very powerful effect on our emotions. Our emotions will not be so strong and powerful. So that's a little bit about the meaning of the first line. And the second line says, your mind from the start was free from fabricated extremes. So what happened with the Chittamatra school, the mind-only school, is that they could see a certain kind of emptiness with regard to the objects that appear to the mind, but then they reified the mind. They didn't see the emptiness of the mind, and they said the mind is truly existing. That which, to which everything appears and which labels everything, that is real. That is a real thing. So there's this danger that we, realize that other things are empty, but my mind is not. So even the mind is empty. Even the mind doesn't exist in the real solid way that it appears. And they talk about the two extremes. You know what the two extremes are? What are they? Huh? Yeah, absolutism is one. Sometimes it's called permanence, eternalism, reification. So according to Prasangika, that involves seeing things as inherently, independently existing, objectively existing. Okay, so the mind doesn't exist like that. And if we think that it does, if we think the mind is inherently existing, that's one of the two extremes. The other one is called nihilism, and that is to deny the existence of things that do exist. So in the case of the mind, that could be, for example, thinking, like many people nowadays think, that the mind is just a product of the brain, and as soon as we die, our body dies, our brain dies, there's no more mind. Mind stops. So that's a nihilistic view. So that's also incorrect. So both of these two extremes are incorrect. We need to understand the mind correctly. It does exist, and then from the Buddhist point of view, it's been existing forever, and it will exist forever. It's eternal. But that doesn't mean it exists inherently. It doesn't exist inherently. It's still empty of inherent existence. It's still just labeled by the mind. So finally, he concludes, understanding this as if, oh yeah, just like that, we can understand this. It takes a long time to really understand these things, but it's worth working at it. So when we do get some understanding of how things are empty of inherent existence, then he says, do not take to mind inherent signs of subject and object. So it means, so whether we're looking at the subject meaning the mind, that which perceives and experiences and knows things, or the objects of the mind, that which we perceive, other people, things, even Buddha, even enlightenment. So all of these things, subjects and objects, are empty of inherent existence. So we need to apply that understanding to all things. And this is how bodhisattvas practice. And by the way, I'll talk more about this next time, but the understanding of emptiness actually doesn't undermine compassion and love. Sometimes people think the two things are incompatible, but they're not. And we'll look more about that in the next verse. But it said that if we really have a correct understanding of emptiness, it enhances our compassion, enhances our love, enhances our altruism. Okay. So just a little few drops of emptiness. Thank you.